Today's discussion will be presented in 3 sections since we're recording it for a radio broadcast on Federal News Radio 1500 AM. You're welcome to post questions and comments during the session, and we'll try to answer them online. I'd like to introduce our moderator, Jason Miller, Executive Editor at Federal News Radio 1500 AM and federalnewsradio.com.
Welcome to the discussion today. Our topic is digital transformation, and I think it's coming at the perfect time for this conversation. Our guests are Guy Cavallo, the Deputy Chief Information Officer for the Small Business Administration, Mark Schwartz, the CIO for the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services at the Homeland Security Department, Mike Hermes, the Chief Technology Officer for the Homeland Security Department, and Adam Clader, the Chief Architect in the Office of the Chief Technologist for Red Hat North America Public Sector. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today and welcome.
Thank you.
Before we get started, let me set some context for our discussion. Digital transformation, hot topic, federal community is talking all about it. But I think we need to start the discussion by defining what agency CIOs mean by digital transformation. Does digital transformation is just another word for IT modernization? Does it mean moving to the cloud? Does it mean changing business processes and doing all of the above? No matter how you define it, digital transformation is more about strategy and less about technology. Forrester Research came up with a digital transformation playbook that helps organizations build a strategy around 4 steps: discover, plan, act, and optimize. Forrester says digital transformation is all about enhancing your customer experience while driving agility and efficiency through your operations. It says digital transformation is a tough challenge, and few firms have made it the full move, and most stumble along the way. And those stumbles come from not listening to their citizens and or customers' needs. A 2016 PricewaterhouseCoopers survey of over 1,400 CIOs found 84% stated they needed to address wider stakeholder needs, and 77% found that technology was one of 3 top influencers transforming stakeholder expectations for their business. The other 2 influencers, I just will guess, is those expectations and those business needs. Again, when we talk about expectations, we're talking about mobility. Can citizens, can customers access their data anytime and anywhere? In fact, the U.S. Digital Service put some of those expectations at the top of their digital services playbook. The first play, understand what people need. The second plan, address the whole experience from start to finish. And the third play, make it simple and intuitive. All those are easier said than done. But now it's the time to bring in our panel, because they're actually getting these digital transformations done. And once again, our panelists are Guy Cavallo, the Deputy Chief Information Officer for the Small Business Administration, Mark Schwartz, the CIO for the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service at the Homeland Security Department, Mike Hermes, the Chief Technology Officer at the Homeland Security Department, and Adam Clader, the Chief Architect in the Office of the Chief Technologist for Red Hat North America Public Sector. So let's start with the definition, digital services or digital transformation. What is the state in your department? Let me start with Guy over at SBA.
We really call it not just a digital transformation, but an overall transformation of the organization. This involves both changing the way we do work. Again, buying tools, buying services isn't just part of it. It's really reinventing ourselves. What I found, and we are actively moving to the cloud, a very, very short timeline of about 3 months from start to finish. We had the option of bringing in outside consultants and pushing the federal staff aside and letting the outside consultants do everything and then hope that the federal staff would catch up. We also had the option of retraining our entire federal staff and taking a couple years to get them to the level where they could do it on their own. And the option that Maria Road, our CIO, and I chose was to bring in the expert consultants to work side by side with our teams. So we have that cross-pollination. You have the knowledge of the legacy operation along with the way of where we're headed. And so that's the approach that we're using. It also involves investing in training the staff, making sure that they're up to date. I host a weekly lunch and learn on Fridays that we do a 1-hour topic each week for the staff to come to, and first one I had 3 at it. The last one I just had about 18. So people are seeing that, bring your lunch, get a chance to catch up. So it really is, and the blank check that we've told our staff is that just because we used to do it one way doesn't mean we need to keep doing that. Let's look at what's the best business reason, what's the impact on the SBA businesses that work with us, what can we do to make their life better, and so that's part of our overall transformation.
I think the last point you made was definitely key. Just because we did it this way doesn't mean we have to continue to do it the same way. What was your reaction when you said that to some of your staff members in the CIO's office? Were they taken aback, or they were like, finally?
Combination of both of that. I think part of them going, okay, well, Guy and Maria will, they'll learn that you can't change things here, and they'll stop pushing us. And what they saw is that we're very stubborn, and we are changing things. Some definitely said that finally we have somebody here that's willing to look out for how do we use technology to accomplish the SBA mission. And that's something Maria and I both harp on with the staff. The Small Business Administration doesn't exist to be a technology company. We exist to help all the small businesses across the U.S. employ the vast majority of workers across the U.S. What we want to do is leverage technology through this transformation to make our mission much more effective. So the longer term employees that are there, they're definitely going, hey, I can buy into this. This is something we've been waiting for.
And I think it's so important to get that buy-in. So let's turn to Mike Hermes. Speaking of buy-in, the challenges you have of a much bigger agency than SBA, what's digital transformation mean to you guys right now?
Yeah, so interestingly, as I've kind of evolved the role of the Chief Technology Officer inside Homeland Security, digital transformation is actually one of our core missions. We actually have that, in our mission statement. And so for us, we've actually refined the definition of digital transformation and what it means to the department. When I think of it, there are really two layers at which there's more than two layers, but two main layers that transformations have to occur. One is in how we do work, and that is all about some of the stuff that you've heard us talk about in many other panels about the velocity of work and delivering capabilities, the agility that we have, how we collaborate with folks across the organization. Those are foundational to achieving outcomes, and you hear us talk about the outcomes are the things that we need to focus on, because like Guy said, when we talk about digital transformation, it's not transforming the CIO organization, it's transforming the organization. Mm-hmm. And so there are four main pillars of digital transformation for us in terms of outcomes. The first is how we engage customers, right? How we reimagine the experience for those customers and empower them to get more out of the services that we offer. That is fundamental to both commercial digital transformation, but even in federal transformations, we have customers that are both public, but also a lot of internal customers that are performing critical missions. So we have to treat them like customers. The second pillar is really about empowering and engaging employees, right? We talked about changing how we work, but we have to consider the folks doing all this work and how we empower them, get them to work together, and tools, technology can enable all of that. The third pillar is really about optimizing operations. There are many processes that are foundational to the operation of any large organization, whether it be acquisition oversight or security processes. We have to look at those processes, re-engineer them, and apply technology to them in order to make them more effective. And finally, and this is the hardest and kind of most ambitious, we look at transforming our products. And again, in a commercial sense, that's easy to understand what your products are typically. For the federal government, I like to look at our mission capabilities as products. How are we delivering capabilities to the hands of these mission operators doing mission, very, very life and death critical things for our country? And if you look at the capabilities that we deliver now, technology enables us to deliver new capabilities that couldn't exist before. That's like delivering a disruptive product into the marketplace. And so that's the fourth pillar that we have to look at when we talk about digital transformation.
And when you go through all four of those pillars, they're all happening at once. It's not like you do one pillar and then you finish. This is an ongoing. Do you find that when you find overlap, or does one roadblock lead to another roadblock? We'll get to some of that later, but talk a little bit about the process of these pillars.
Absolutely. So first of all, everything we're talking about is how we apply technology, data, and design to solve these problems. But you're absolutely right. There are some that have to be tackled before others, and some of them that can happen in parallel. For example, our acquisition oversight process for how we deliver IT capabilities generally is foundational to almost everything we do. So when we took a look at that, we said, guess what? We have to transform this before we can start working on other transformations. And so that's been one of the first focus areas for our office, and it's been in conjunction and collaboration across the entire department with all the other lines of business, because we couldn't do it without them. And so we looked at transforming that acquisition oversight process, and we're in the middle of making major changes to many elements of those processes.
And I've done several interviews with Soraya Korea, your Chief Procurement Officer. Great woman, lot going on there, so there's plenty to talk about, I'm sure. Let's move to Mark Schwartz, USCIS. Mark, you've been transforming, it seems like now, for quite a while, and you got one of the biggest projects to transform.
This. It's still going on.
Still going on, but in a good way. You're making progress. So
yes, I think so.
Tell us where you're at.
So I also think of the digital transformation as primarily having to do with our interactions with the public. But there are a lot of other transformations that have to happen at the same time to support that particular transformation. So one of the big changes for us is starting from a user-centric point of view or a customer-centric point of view. What is the experience like for somebody who is applying for benefits from us, or is a company verifying the employment eligibility of employees? What does it look like to them? And interestingly, in our environment, the digital piece is a very small piece of it, right? They care about how we allow them to file their applications online, how they can check the status of their applications, things like that. But really what people care about, I think, is how we process their applications. And does it take us a long time? And do we do a good job? And do we make demands on them that they feel aren't necessary? Those sorts of things. So in order to transform the experience of the public when they're interacting with us, it's not just a matter of online digital services, it's a matter of our operations and how our technology supports those operations and so on. All of those are relevant to customer experience. Now, an interesting angle on this, and I know Mike has to face it throughout DHS, is defining who the customer is, really, right? So on the one hand, we want to provide service to the people who are applying for benefits. On the other hand, part of our mission is to safeguard the integrity of the immigration system. Essentially, we want to be making the right adjudication decisions at all times, not just making people happy. So in a way, the customer there is the American public on whose behalf we are administering the immigration system. And I think there's a lot we can do in terms of transparency, in terms of increased security and increased attention to potential fraud and national security concerns and things like that.
So Mark, have you been able to define the customer? Because in many ways you have everybody in the U.S. is a customer in some way or another, or anyone who, maybe all over the world. So how did you define that customer?
Well, I think we're always, I shouldn't say always, we're often making trade-offs, right? So perhaps we need to spend more time adjudicating an application in order to ensure national security and prevent fraud, right? So it's one customer set who's benefiting and another one that's not benefiting from that. But in fact, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit where everybody's happy. If we can lean out our processing, streamline processing, reduce costs, make things go faster with the same amount of resource, things like that, that benefits all of the customer segments. And I love it when we can find things that do that.
And there's probably, as you said, a lot of low-hanging fruit out there, just based on, as you said, leaning out, making things faster, better, cheaper. Mm-hmm. Let's turn to Adam from Red Hat. You just heard three kind of different stories, but all kind of down the same path. React to what you heard, and then what are you hearing from customers?
Yeah, well, so first of all, as a customer, thank you guys for great things like TSA PreCheck and Global Entry. Huge fan of those services, so thanks for all of that. I think it starts with mission, right? That's the first thing out of everybody's mouth when we start to talk about this idea of digital transformation. What is your mission? What are you focusing on as a business? Because really that's what the government is. They're in the business of delivering on their mission. And identifying your customers is a huge part of that. And customers are going to be on both sides, not only your internal stakeholders, but also your external constituents. Figuring out how to service them in a way that they're now expecting to be serviced is a very different sort of experience than it was before. All of these agencies at one time had 100% paper interaction with their customers. No longer acceptable. We got to a point, not only because of paperwork reduction acts, but consumers are no longer willing to interact with paper as they work with the government. And I think as we move forward, this isn't just about a paper conversation, but as we move forward with our customers, we're going to have to meet them where they need to be met more and more. So I think that's a lot of what digital transformation is about, is figuring out where you need to meet your customer and how you adapt your business to those expectations.
The idea of meeting your customer where they are, we can get down the path of mobility, we can get down the several different paths there, but how do you know where they are many times? I mean, understanding, like going back to Mark's point, who your customer is, they're everywhere. They're at this table and they're outside walking right now, and so give me a sense from your perspective, where do you start with the low-hanging fruit?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think mobile is a huge part of that conversation. You know, as we think about our most needy constituents throughout sort of the U.S. population, and even those that are becoming U.S. citizens, they're not likely to have a desktop or a laptop at home with which to interact with the federal government, right? Now that it's 100% digital experience, they're going to need to be able to do that via some sort of mobile device. So adaptive applications that are responsive are much more able to respond to the needs of our customer base. So I do think that mobile has a big part to play in that. And then you get into this idea of, well, I went out and found a Node.js developer to write a mobile application, but I need to integrate it with all of my back-end systems and services, and they don't even know what a PeopleSoft is, much less how to write to the PeopleSoft API. So how do we sort of cross that chasm as well in order to get there?
Mike, jump in.
Yeah, one thing we've been talking a lot about customer, and Mark had mentioned something about user-centric design. And one thing that it's important to make the distinction between user and customer. For simple commercial applications, the customer is the user. But for our applications and our businesses, oftentimes those are two different constituencies. And so we struggle sometimes. I know Mark's programs have had challenges when the user, we're trying to improve the user experience, make them more effective. They may have demands, doesn't necessarily line up with the needs of the ultimate customer, which may be the business unit or the public that is not using the system. So that's important, and as we approach these transformations, we have to keep that in mind.
So let me get this right, because to me, user-customer is almost, it's synonymous, because who's using your application?
Right.
It's your customer.
Right, but not always.
But who would be the other person?
So Mark referenced, in fact, we have adjudicators that use a system. They are on there using the system. But we have a customer that is not just the business unit, which is actually made up of leaders and business and analysts that aren't actually using the system. They actually own the priorities of that business. They're not actually users of the system. And then you have a customer that is the public that we are safeguarding by making those adjudication decisions that never will even see or understand what that system is. You have to take into account their needs as you're designing your systems, not just the needs of the direct user.
Interesting. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. Mark, hold that thought. When you come back, we're going to jump in, because I want to split your hairs a little more on that.
All right.
You're listening to the panel discussion, Digital Transformation, the Consumerization of IT, sponsored by Red Hat on federalnewsradio.com and 1500 AM.